Helena, thanks so much for joining the show. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about your experiences. We've been told by the media that gender transition is easy, that it's kind of like the Sneetch star on, star off machine, that basically everything is hunky dory. And not only is it hunky dory, that hormone treatments, hormone replacements, surgeries, all this basically fixes all of the underlying problems. You're somebody who not only went through transition, you went through detransition as well.
So for me, it was more of kind of a gradual process, almost of indoctrination. So it began around the time I was 15. I was going through a period in my life where I just didn't have a lot of friends. I was, about to switch schools, coming into high school. And I started relying on the internet a lot for just my day-to-day activities. I would just kind of I just had gotten a smartphone actually, and I was just sitting on the smartphone all day at school. And then I would come home, I would open my laptop, and I would just go back to browsing social media. And it was in that kind of environment that I was introduced to a lot of gender ideology, but also just kind of like leftist woke ideology as well. And so I was introduced to these ideas. And in order to really fit in socially, which I really wanted to do since I didn't have many friends in real life, I had to adopt these kind of like leftist beliefs. And well, if you feel like you don't fit in, that means you're trans. If you feel like you don't like your body, that means you're trans. If you feel like other girls don't understand you, that means you're trans. And so it was kind of like that convergence of those two lines of messaging that really led me to start thinking like, hey, well, maybe if I just change my pronouns, that'll give me an indication of if that's right for me. And then, you get those messages back at you that it's like, yes, you need to change your pronouns. Gender questioning is good. That's how you discover yourself. And by the way, only trans people question their gender. So if you're questioning your gender, that means that you're trans. So it was like, I kind of like began like that. And then it was a process of about 2 years where I just kept kind of like going further and further down that rabbit hole. I would change my pronouns, get a ton of positive affirmation. And then after a while, I would say like, I'm still uncomfortable with myself. I want to go a little bit further, kind of subconsciously thinking this way. So then I would like cut my hair, for example, and then tons of positive affirmation. I might change my pronouns again, tons of positive affirmation. And after kind of like 2 years of going down a rabbit hole like that, I ended up thinking, oh, well, I was actually meant to be a boy and I need to transition. So it wasn't like one day I just woke up and started believing that. It was kind of like this long process of being very detached from reality and not having a lot of social influences in real life to challenge or push back against some of the things I was learning online.
So during this period, I mean, what we've seen in a lot of these cases is that it's young women who are predominantly already suffering from depression and anxiety and are looking for sort of an excuse for why they are suffering or justification for why they're suffering from depression and anxiety. Do you think that you were suffering from depression or anxiety during this period when you started kind of going down this internet rabbit hole?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And another thing that was really major for me, and I know is also major for other young girls, is like body image issues. And then I got these messages from the internet saying, oh, that's all because you were born in the wrong body. Like you don't have these body image issues because of your environment or anything else. You have them because you're born in the wrong body. And if you change your body through testosterone and surgeries and all this kind of stuff, then you will no longer feel so uncomfortable in your body. And that was a very seductive message to me because I was just so deeply struggling with that.
So while you were kind of in the first couple of years that you were moving down this path, what did your parents know and were they aware of any of this and how did they react?
So for that kind of 2-year-ish period that I told you about where I was just going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, they had no idea. And it was only once I had decided, oh, I was born in the wrong body, I need to transition. That's when I decided to come out and tell them about my intentions. But we kind of didn't really have, a relationship where we really like talked about what was going on with us. So the way I did it was just, I just came out and said, like, I'm a boy. You either call me a boy or, we don't talk and I'm going to go on testosterone because I was about to turn 18. So it wasn't really like a back and forth conversation. It was just kind of like, I just put this in front of my parents and my mom. I put it in front of my mom and she, understandably was quite shocked at this assertion that I was going to, transition into a boy. And she kind of like shut down a little bit, and it was really difficult. It was a really difficult time in our relationship.
So there was no actual medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria. There was no actual psychological screening or anything like that. You basically walked in, you said you wanted testosterone, they gave it to you.
Yeah. And again, ironically, they diagnosed me with an endocrine disorder. They didn't even diagnose me with gender dysphoria. They, on my medical records, it says I have a diagnosis of an endocrine disorder, and that's why I needed the testosterone.
And what were the effects on you physiologically of taking that much testosterone?
I didn't end up having very many physical changes, but I had a lot of very intense psychological effects that happened to me. So obviously, you have like, I had emotional changes that, I kind of describe it as, at first, it was just a lot of irritability. And I just felt on edge all the time. I felt like I was just jumping out of my skin all the time, restlessness, irritability. And then as the months progressed, about a year into it, it turned into this kind of feeling where I didn't have emotions anymore. It was just like anytime I felt anything, whether, it might have been sadness or frustration, that would just kind of immediately turn into rage. And so I just felt completely out of control of myself. I was spiraling down into just like dysfunction and just really living an unhealthy life. And, these rage attacks would get so bad that I felt like I really had to externalize it. It's not that I wanted to hurt anybody, but when I would be overcome with this, like I wanted to like break something, I wanted to like hit something. And so being, this person who was completely unprepared for these feelings, I kind of ended up taking it out on myself. And I ended up hurting myself pretty badly a couple of times. And one of those times actually led to me having to go to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, they, checked me into a psychiatric unit. So that it was just a incredibly dark, difficult time of my life that I do not wish on anyone. And then I never got any surgeries or anything. And about a year and a half in, that's when I kind of had my realization. After a couple of months of doubts, that's when I had my realization that it was all a mistake. Like everything from those first pronoun changes on social media, that was all a mistake.
And so what was that like when you went back to your parents, you said, listen, I've been living, in a way that I'm think is not right for me. I made some bad decisions along the way. When you went back to your social group, how was that? Because as you've been discussing, particularly on the internet, there are these social groups that form where every change that you make away from sort of traditional gender is seen as something worthy of cheering. So there must have been an enormous amount of blowback when you said, well, you know what, I think this is wrong. And I'm actually a biological woman and I'm gendered as a woman.
So I think part of it, actually, part of my ability to desist from this ideology was the fact that I had stopped using the internet so much. So I had gradually been, because my life was so dysfunctional, I just didn't feel like posting on social media anymore. And I was just kind of in my own world. And I think being separated from all of these like social reinforcements and messages that you see online allowed me to kind of think and eventually come to the conclusion that, I wasn't trans. So in that sense, when I detransitioned, I didn't have that immediate social circle to blow back at me. But I did go back to a social media account that I had and announce that, I was no longer transitioning. And I said that my beliefs about gender issues had evolved. And when I made that post, that's when I got some blowback. I had some old friends that at one point were very close to me, but we hadn't talked in maybe a couple of months, actually messaged me like, you're a disgusting person. I'm so disappointed in how you turned out. You've gone insane. Because there's kind of like this attitude in the trans community that if you question your transition, that makes you insane. So I was kind of getting like those kinds of accusations as well. So it was very difficult, but I do think that, not having all of those social reinforcements there in the first place is what allowed me to begin to unpack my beliefs.